Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. We have filmmaker Michael Moore, along with two additional filmmakers who are part of this documentary, Planet of the Humans, that has been actually sort of controversial on the left, so we're going to talk to them about that. We also have reporter Rich McHugh. You may be aware, we had him on the show before about what he had uncovered with regards to Tara Reade. He has a new bombshell report, and that's actually where we want to start right now.
That's right. So Rich McHugh, of course, he's the former NBC News producer who worked with Ronan Farrow to investigate Harvey Weinstein. He's been on top of the Tara Reade story now for quite some time, reporting yesterday in Business Insider that Tara Reade contemporaneously, at the time in 1993, I believe, told her neighbor about the incident that allegedly occurred with Joe Biden. So that is the first kind of like independent, so to speak, corroboration that has emerged now from this. So we have the Larry King phone call. We have her mother calling in contemporaneously at the time into Larry King. So something, obviously Tara Reade told her mother something happened. Her neighbor now vividly remembers almost the entire incident being recounted to her. Tara being very upset. I mean,
and an additional colleague. And by the way, the neighbor is a Biden supporter. Who hates Trump, and is planning still to vote for Biden, but felt it was the right thing to do to come forward. She'd spoken with Tara a few years later. They were neighbors in an apartment complex. And then a work colleague, when Tara, after leaving D.C., went to work in a California State Senate office, also recounted that Tara had indicated she had been fired for complaining about sexual harassment, which again corroborates key details of the story. So, I mean, look, a lot of people have been dragging their feet, not wanting to think about this allegation, not wanting to deal with it, wanting to try to find any way they possibly can to dismiss it. But when you have her she said she told her brother, brother confirms. She said she told the friend confirms. Says mom called into Larry King Live. Tape emerges. And now these two individuals, without Tara even asking them to come forward, coming up to support her, in part because they've watched how poorly she's been treated and felt an obligation to come out and support her.
Right. I mean, and so with all of this development, you would think Joe Biden would be asked about this. No, I'm just joking. That didn't happen. Actually, the campaign on the very same day that this story broke announced that they will be holding a virtual women's town hall that will be occurring sometime later today. I'm going to hold my breath to see if there's any questions that are asked by any of the participants towards to Joe Biden and to any of the others about these sexual assault allegations. And at the same time, yesterday, while all of this was occurring, Kamala Harris, Symone Sanders, and other African-American leaders were on a virtual town hall put on by the Biden campaign. And now, wouldn't you believe, first of all, let's start off with this. What does Joe Biden have to say and has said in the past about what to do whenever these types of allegations come forward? Let's take a listen.
Do you think this time it's different, that we are seeing with the Me Too movement something that is truly going to lead to change for women?
Look, at its root, this is all about the abuse of power. It's all about the abuse of power. Whether it's Harvey Weinstein or the guy the plumber who has a secretary he harasses. It's all about the abuse of power, number one. Number two, women should be believed.
Okay. It's pretty unequivocal, right?
All about the abuse of power, and women should be believed.
Women should be believed. That tracks very well with Kamala Harris. And the thing is, Kamala Harris, who was on that Joe Biden town hall, who has come out in support of Joe Biden, now a leading contender for his vice president, a year ago, when women came forward, including Tara Reade, came forward to say that Joe Biden was creepy and made them feel uncomfortable, this is what she had to say.
I believe them, and I respect them being able to tell their story and having the courage to do it.
Do you believe that the vice president should enter this race?
He's going to have to make that decision for himself. I wouldn't tell him what to do.
Respects them. She said she believes them in another clip. I mean, it's very, very, very clear about all of this. And same thing on Christine Blasey Ford. I mean, this is the best part about this whole thing. You can go through, it just happened about a year and a half ago. And this is it, a year ago. She literally wrote the Time 100 introduction, like the blurb for Christine Blasey Ford on the cover of Time magazine, April 2019. That's what she had to say. Not one word on that town hall, not one tweet, not one question by the media. One of the biggest cover-ups that I've ever seen in media.
No Democratic elected official wants to say one word about this. I mean, a couple have come out and said that the women deserve to be heard. I think AOC said that. Bernie at some point said something similar. But with this new bombshell report, everyone is completely silent. And I don't know, did you read Rebecca Traister had a take on the women who are being considered for Joe Biden's vice president, Kamala, of course, being one of them. And on the one hand, yeah, they're like hypocrisy, double standards, et cetera, are blatantly obvious, especially with Kamala because she talked specifically a year ago about Joe Biden's accusers in particular. On the other hand, like, it's actually not, it's outrageous that they would get asked about these things before Joe even gets asked about it. And several of them have. Gretchen Whitmer has, Amy Klobuchar has. And look, do I feel terrible for them? No, I don't really, because all of those individuals who are being considered for the vice presidential slot were very influential in terms of actually getting Joe Biden the nomination. So they sort of had a hand in putting themselves in this very uncomfortable position. But I mean, the bottom line to me is it is absolutely outrageous that while all of this is happening, and Joe Biden did an interview yesterday after this story broke, he still hasn't gotten asked about it.
News.
Still not one word.
CBS News, I believe it was, CBS Miami station, wide-ranging interview.
They talked about Cuba,
Venezuela, immigration, and not one question about this terror allegation. I mean, it's just too perfect in a way. If you look at the level of the cover-up that we're now seeing, I mean, allegation after we roll the tape on these people.
I know.
have the tape. It's right here.
And I don't understand why. I truly don't understand why this is so difficult for the sort of Me Too feminists who were leading the charge on Christine Blasey Ford and have been at the forefront of this movement and have sort of taken on that mantle, the Alyssa Milanos of the world, et cetera. It's okay. It's a perfectly reasonable position to hold to say, I believe Tara Reade. I'm not happy about it, but I still have to vote for Joe Biden because Trump is too bad. Like, that is a perfectly...
Like Tara's neighbor.
That is exactly the position Tara's neighbor took, right? It is not your job to guarantee Joe Biden's election. It is not your job to be his flack. It's not your job to carry the Democratic Party's water.
Right.
That is not your job. You don't have control. I mean, that's the other thing. It's sort of the height of arrogance to think that by you saying something, you are personally going to influence this election. You have no control over this election, ultimately. You don't know what's going to happen. And this was Ryan Grimm's point. People are asking him about, like, don't you worry that you're helping Trump here? He's like, I don't pretend to know what the downstream impacts of my reporting are going to be. And the minute that you start couching your words by what you think the impact will be and how hard you're going to go, how honest you're going to be, how true to your principles you're going to be based on what the downstream impacts are, then, I mean, you just lose all credibility and you can't know what those downstream impacts are going to be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And by the way, look, if Ryan didn't do it, somebody else is going to do it. Rich McHugh was going to do it, or, it's going to come out.
Right.
It's all just a matter of that, no matter how hard the corporate media tried here. But look, this is what they do. Washington Post last night. This is how they framed the story. Quote, Trump allies highlight new claims regarding allegations against Biden. And then the headline on that, so that was the tweet. The story that they have is developments in allegations against Biden amplify efforts to question his behavior. Now, first of all, isn't it your job to question his behavior when you question him? These people have ready and full access to the Biden campaign. If you don't think they haven't had the opportunity, they have. He gave a wide-ranging interview to Politico this weekend, 30-minute interview where he blathered on about a green infrastructure deal, and they just didn't have the time to ask him about
around to it.
Tara Reade. And the best part is, I went through, actually read this story, so did you, and it's the whole Trump allies framing. You have to scroll down all the way down to the bottom, and this is what they talk about. Mitch McConnell was asked about it and was like, yeah, it seems pretty hypocritical. And Donald Trump Jr. retweeted a few news items about the Tara Reade allegation. That is Trump allies amplifying the effort.
So they don't cover the allegation itself.
No.
Or the corroboration itself, the new evidence that has emerged. Instead, they used Tara and her allegations as some sort of partisan political football to paint this like this is all a political ploy, rather than actually educating their readers about what may or may not have happened and what the evidence is. I mean, it's so ideological and so biased, but this is the way that they've decided to deal with these allegations and this is every story. I mean, rather than dealing with them head on, the way that they have in other instances where it's just an allegation emerge. Here's the evidence. They have to find some way to shade it, spin it, turn it into a partisan game so that people know which side they're supposed to be on.
And that's what makes me so angry, is because I lived through Kavanaugh, and I lived and saw so many people denounced as rape apologists. I mean, Jeff Flake getting screamed at in an elevator. Who's screaming at these Democratic senators in the elevator? My friend Henry Rogers over the Daily Caller went and asked every single Democratic office for their reaction to the Tara Reade allegation. Not one person said a word. They had no response. You go over this. Down the line, this conservatives pounce framework, it's very familiar to everybody on the right. It's like anytime a Democrat does something wrong, they're like, the Trump people are pointing out that the Democrats did something wrong.
Well, and that's where you come to realize how foolish it is to think that if, you individual feminist or you individual lawmaker decide not to say anything, that is going to hide the story from public view and ultimately do your team a service.
Right.
And you see this very clearly in the way that the Democratic primary played out. Did you do the Democratic Party a service by ignoring this claim, which could have come out much, much earlier? Remember, Tara was trying to get this story heard much earlier, but Time's Up, the organization that's supposed to be, with that Alyssa Milano's involved with, that's supposed to be the place that you go to get help hearing your story, decided to reject her because it had to do with a politician, specifically Joe Biden. So she wasn't able to get her claim heard, not because she wasn't trying to say it, but because no one would listen earlier on in the primary. Okay? Did that do the Democratic Party team a service? No, because he wasn't vetted. He wasn't vetted on this. He wasn't vetted on his record. He wasn't vetted on Hunter, because everyone was so worried that by saying anything and by making an aggressive case against him that they would help Trump. Well, nothing has helped Trump more than elevating to the nomination such a deeply flawed and problematic and untested candidate. So don't be mad at me about that, right? Don't be mad at Katie Halper or Ryan Grimm or Rich McHugh or anyone who is just trying to honestly evaluate the facts in front of us. Be mad at the people who didn't want to have this conversation earlier on when there was more of a chance to be able to change course.
Yeah, I mean, look, were you mad at the New York Times for reporting that Hillary Clinton had a private email server, right? People
yes,
actually
they are, actually.
That was the funny thing. Yeah. It's like you're mad at reporters for doing their job, and you're not mad at somebody for using a private or allegedly sexually assaulting somebody.
There's deep confusion about what the job of a reporter is, or an analyst. Yes, I have historically been a Democrat, although my affiliation with that party is tenuous at best at this time. That doesn't mean that it's my job to spin for them. No. It's not my job. I've never seen that as my job. It's certainly not the job of a straight reporter to pick and choose which stories are going to help Team D or help Team R. Right. That is not your job. And so, don't be mad at Ryan or Rich or Katie or anyone else who was involved with this story actually getting at a hearing. Be mad at the people who didn't have the courage during the primary when it could have made a difference to really vet this guy and hold his feet to the fire and give voters all the information that they, because I do feel bad for Democratic voters who really do want to beat Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. They may well have, maybe they would have seen this and saying, you know what, this is still our guy. Fine. Then you have all the information. But to have this come out after people made this selection, and then you find out, that puts people in it's a terrible situation to be in, to feel like those are your two only options in the fall.
And you know what? Look, vis-a-vis Donald Trump, people knew exactly what they were getting because reporters had no problem being adversarial, publishing information, these allegations. People knew exactly what they were getting,
right.
and they made their vote based on that. And in this part, it's like you said, so many of them view it as their job. They're so scarred by Trump's victory and their complicity, so to speak, by doing their job and pointing out some of Hillary Clinton's flaws, not even close to all of them, and that people looked at those flaws and said, that's not for me.
Yeah.
That they refused to even report on some of these flaws of Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And it has the backfiring opposite effect.
It does.
Which everybody can see the hypocrisy. Everybody in their eyes.
Right. And then when you do have a legit critique of Donald Trump, no one listens.
Yeah, nobody cares.
Right. When you do have a legitimately positive story about Joe Biden, nobody listens because they're like, you're in the tank. And that's how you end up. I mean, they were complicit in Donald Trump's election. There's no doubt about that. Just not in the way that they think. Right? It wasn't because you covered Hillary Clinton. It's because you played into Donald Trump's traps and let him grab the media spotlight, let him call in and played all his role because it was great for rating. That's how you were complicit. And they didn't learn one thing with that. They still fall into every one of the traps that they just can't resist. Even when they know they're doing it, they're like, we shouldn't be talking about this, but we can't resist.
We just can't resist the latest tweet. Well, we're going to be covering this story a lot throughout the show, and we're going to tell you what's on our radars. That's next.